The WNBA is in full damage control mode, or at least it should be, after weeks of controversy surrounding the treatment of Caitlin Clark. The league's most marketable star in years has spiraled into national headlines and now federal attention. What started as a basketball issue has officially crossed over into the territory of politics, legal threats, and public outrage. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. And if you thought this was just about hard fouls, you're missing the much bigger, much messier picture. Caitlin Clark isn't just another promising rookie. She's a WNBA's golden ticket, a record-breaking NCAA legend whose arrival sent ticket sales, TV ratings, and merchandise revenue skyrocketing. She's a player drawing in new fans, filling arenas that were half-empty last season, and getting people who never watched the WNBA before to tune in. In other words, she's the cash cow the league desperately needed. And yet, in the middle of all that hype, Clark has been on the receiving end of some of the most blatant, aggressive, and frankly dangerous physical play we've seen in years. We're not talking about normal basketball contact. We're talking about off-ball blindsides, hip checks that would make an NFL coach proud, and even body slams that wouldn't look out of place in pro wrestling. Fans noticed. The media noticed. Clips of these hits, from players like Kennedy Carter, Diamond DeShields, and Marina Mabrey, have racked up millions of views online. They're not, oops, plays, they're targeted. They happen when Clark isn't even holding the ball. And here's the part that's really ignited the firestorm. The league has done almost nothing in response. No suspensions, barely any fines, not even a public acknowledgement from Commissioner Kathy Engelbert that there's a problem. Instead, the league's response has been silence. Silence at a moment when the WNBA should be showing leadership. Silence while one of its biggest assets takes cheap shot after cheap shot in front of sold-out crowds and national TV audiences. Silence that's now being interpreted not as incompetence, but as deliberate. Because here's the uncomfortable truth making its way through sports talk shows, fan forums, and now political circles. Caitlin Clark isn't just being targeted because she's good. She's being targeted because she's good and she's different. She's young, white, and incredibly marketable in a league that's historically failed to retain mainstream attention. Whether people want to admit it or not, the conversation about her treatment has turned into a conversation about race, favoritism, and what kind of players the league chooses to protect. And then came the political earthquake. Indiana Senator Jim Banks, who represents Clark's home state and has a front-row seat to her meteoric rise with the Indiana fever, sent a formal letter to the WNBA demanding answers. He didn't mince words. The letter accused the league of failing to protect its players, singled out the lack of penalties for the repeated hits on Clark, and hinted at broader concerns over fairness and player safety. Once that letter went public, the story jumped from sports media to mainstream political coverage. And that's when the speculation started. Could this actually become a federal investigation? Sports pundits like Stephen A. Smith have been fanning those flames, pointing out that the situation now has multiple legal angles. From workplace safety laws to potential civil rights issues, it can be argued that Clark is being treated differently based on race or other protective factors. The Wall Street Journal even ran a piece framing her treatment as part of a larger civil rights concern, which poured gasoline on the fire. Here's where things get even messier. The political climate in 2025 is a powder keg, and sports aren't immune. Figures on both sides of the aisle see the Clark situation as a potential talking point. Former President Trump has reportedly taken an interest, not necessarily out of concern for the WNBA's integrity, but because attaching his name to the defense of a popular athlete is a free PR boost. In other words, what started as a sports controversy is now becoming a political football. And the WNBA's leadership seems totally unprepared for fallout. Let's talk about Commissioner Kathy Engelbert for a second. On paper, she's supposed to be the steward of the league's image, the one ensuring the safety and professionalism of the game. But in practice, her handling of this has been non-existent. No press conference, no visible discipline for players delivering cheap shots, no league-wide statement reinforcing that targeted aggression against any player, star or not, won't be tolerated. That lack of visible action sends a very clear message, intentional or not. Either the league doesn't see a problem, or it doesn't want to see a problem. And both of those options are bad. Because the thing is, the evidence is everywhere. The hits are on video. The sound bites are out there. Even some players have given thinly veiled comments about not liking all the media attention Clark gets. The dots aren't hard to connect, and fans have already connected them, which is why lawsuits are suddenly in the conversation. If the league continues to ignore the repeated physical targeting of one of its players, especially one as high-profile as Clark, it opens itself up to legal claims about unsafe working conditions, failure to enforce its own rules, and even discriminatory treatment. Those claims get even stronger if there's a pattern of similar incidents without penalties. And here's the thing, this isn't just about Clark's safety. It's about the integrity of the game. If fans start believing that the WNBA is willing to let stars get battered because it makes for good TV drama, or because they're not the kind of star the league's leadership wants to elevate, the whole sport loses credibility. That's the tightrope Engelbert is walking now. And the scary part for the league is that the balance might already be gone. Look at how fans are reacting. Fever home games have turned into rallies for Clark. Every time she takes a hit, the boos rain down. Every time she bounces back up, the cheers are deafening. Fans aren't just supporting her. They're openly challenging the league to step in. Media coverage is making it worse for the WNBA's image because the narrative isn't tough basketball. It's league fails to protect its star. And once a league gets a reputation for not protecting its stars, good luck convincing future rookies or their agents that this is a safe and fair environment to build a career. The stakes are bigger than one season or one player. Caitlin Clark is a once-in-a-generation marketing opportunity. If she feels alienated, if she burns out early, or if she gets seriously injured because the league didn't clamp down on targeted play, the WNBA won't just lose her, they'll lose a chunk of the new audience she brought with her. And make no mistake, those audiences are new. Clark has drawn in casual sports fans, young girls dreaming of basketball careers, and even people who had never watched women's sports before. She's expanded the pie. But if those new fans see her being treated like a punching bag while the league shrugs, they won't stick around. The worst part? This could have been avoided. The WNBA had a simple path here. Acknowledge the hits, enforce the rules consistently, and make it clear that players' safety is non-negotiable. Instead, they stayed quiet, and in doing so, let other people control the story. Now that story is out of their hands. It belongs to politicians, to media pundits, to fan movements, to potential legal investigators. And when you're in the middle of a PR crisis, the last thing you want is to lose control of the narrative. If the federal angle materializes, and it's looking more possible every day, the league will be forced into transparency it's been avoiding. Investigators could demand internal communications, review officiating reports, and interview players about whether they feel safe on the court. That's the kind of process that exposes everything, not just the parts the league is comfortable sharing. And if that happens, the WNBA's leadership will have no choice but to address questions they've been dodging. Why haven't these repeated hits on Clark resulted in suspensions? Why has there been no public acknowledgement from the commissioner? What's the league's official process for protecting players from targeted aggression? And perhaps most damaging, is there a bias in who gets protected? Those questions won't just come from reporters. They'll come from lawmakers, from lawyers, from sponsors who don't want their brands associated with an unsafe or unfair league. Sponsors are another piece of this puzzle. Big brands have embraced Caitlin Clark because she's a positive, high-visibility figure. If they start thinking she's being mistreated or put at risk, they might start putting pressure on the league behind closed doors. And if they feel that pressure isn't being addressed, they might pull their money. The WNBA can survive angry tweets. It cannot survive a loss of sponsor confidence. So here we are, a basketball story that's no longer just about basketball. Caitlin Clark's situation is now a test of leadership, of the league's professionalism, and of how sports organizations handle their most valuable assets when things get messy. If Engelbert and the league act now, they might be able to spin this as a "we heard the criticism, we're making changes" moment. But the longer they wait, the more this turns into a cautionary tale. Because if the WNBA won't protect Caitlin Clark, the player bringing in record crowds, ratings, and revenue, what does that say about how they value any of their players? That's the question echoing now in arenas, in headlines, and maybe soon in courtrooms. And it's the question that could define not just this season, but the league's reputation for years to come. The crazy part? This whole mess has shifted the way fans are watching games. Normally, the storylines are about matchups, playoff races, or who's on a hot streak. Now, with Clark, there's this added layer. People are tuning in not just to see her play, but to see if she'll get hit. It's like the entire season has been framed around a weird, unofficial betting pool on whether the refs will actually step in this time. That's not basketball drama. That's reality TV chaos. And it's not the kind that helps a league's credibility. Every time Clark takes another hard shot off the ball, the crowd reaction is instant. And it's not just boos at the player who made the hit. You can feel the tension shift toward the officials and the league itself. It's that collective, "Are you really going to let this happen again?" energy, and the players dishing out these hits? They're not being subtle. Some of them are leaning into the role of villain without saying it outright. Others act like they're just playing hard. But the timing of the contact tells a different story. A blindside shove when Clark's cutting the corner? That's not defense. That's a message. The league's refusal to call out publicly has opened a dangerous door. Because now, instead of shutting down behavior, it's being normalized. Other players see what they can get away with. Young fans see what the officials let slide. And the longer it continues, the more it becomes part of the game culture, which is exactly how toxic patterns start. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If this were happening to a star in another league, say LeBron James in the NBA, Patrick Mahomes in the NFL, or Aaron Judge in MLB, there would already have been multiple suspensions. The commissioners in those leagues understand that protecting stars isn't just about safety. It's about protecting the product. You don't let your MVP get repeatedly battered without consequences, because your MVP is a walking billboard for the league. And that's where the WNBA looks completely out of its depth. They have this rare, once-in-a-generation player who's bringing in new money, new eyeballs, and new relevance. And instead of safeguarding that, they're letting her be the league's punching bag, literally. Inside the WNBA offices, there's probably a lot of talk about not wanting to show favoritism toward Clark. On paper, that sounds noble. Equal rules for everyone. But in practice, it's backfiring. Because the lack of intervention doesn't look like fairness. It looks like neglect. And neglect is the word that keeps coming up in fan conversations. Not just neglect of Clark, but the league's duty to maintain professionalism. Neglect of the officiating standard. Neglect of the idea that stars should be protected, not given special scoring treatment, but kept safe from targeted harm. The most damaging part? This isn't a private conversation anymore. It's all playing out in the public square. Social media threads with millions of views. Sports commentators openly calling the WNBA's leadership invisible. Political figures adding their voices. When your commissioner's name starts trending not because of a major expansion announcement or a championship moment, but because people think she's failing at her job, that's not just bad PR. That's a credibility crisis. Sponsors are watching too. And this is where the financial risk starts to look very real. The brands that came rushing in to associate with Caitlin Clark, Nike, Gatorade, State Farm, whoever, signed on because they wanted to attach themselves to a success story. They didn't sign up to be part of a controversy where their star endorser is being physically targeted on national television while the league looks away. That's the hidden leverage in all of this. Clark's value isn't just in what she does for the Fever or the WNBA. It's in the ecosystem of sponsorships, broadcast rights, and merchandise sales she fuels. If any of those revenue streams start to wobble because the league mishandles her protection, the backlash won't just be from fans. It'll be from corporate partners demanding change. And make no mistake, those partners have power. They can pressure quietly through back channels, or they can make a public break, which is even more damaging. The WNBA has worked hard to grow its financial stability over the last decade. A high-profile loss of sponsor confidence would be a major step backward. Then there's the looming shadow of legal action. Lawsuits don't have to win in court to hurt. The mere process of discovery, the headlines about unsafe workplace or failure to protect employees, would be devastating to the league's public image. And if the situation escalates into a formal federal probe, as some pundits are predicting, The scrutiny will go beyond the hits themselves. Investigators will want to know why the league acted or didn't act in certain ways, and whether there's any pattern of bias or selective enforcement. That's where the WNBA could be most vulnerable. Because if there's even perception that Clark's race, fame, or outsider status in the league's culture played a role in how her situation has been handled, it's not just a sports story anymore. It's a civil rights issue. And once something crosses into that territory, it becomes a political lightning rod. Lawmakers get involved. Media outlets treat it like a national issue. And the league loses control over how the story is told, which is exactly what's happening now. The WNBA isn't steering the conversation. It's reacting to it, and reacting late. You can almost map the timeline. Clark takes hit after hit with no serious penalties issued. Fans call it out. Media picks it up. A senator sends a letter. National political figures weigh in. Legal speculation starts. That's a PR nightmare growing in real time. And yet, there's still no major visible action from the commissioner's office to get ahead of it. Instead, the public is left with a vacuum. And when there's a vacuum, people fill it with their own narratives. Some say the league is jealous of Clark's sudden popularity. Others believe they're using her as a storyline to fuel rivalries and boost ratings. Some think it's about avoiding backlash from disciplining certain players. Whatever the truth is, the damage is the same. The WNBA's credibility is taking hit after hit, just like Clark. And here's the brutal irony. If the league had been proactive from the start, if they'd handed out suspensions after the first couple of egregious hits, made a statement reinforcing zero tolerance for targeted fouls, and made Clark's safety a priority, they'd be in a much stronger position right now. Instead, they've let the situation fester into something that's now bigger than the sport. From a cultural standpoint, Clark's resilience is part of what's keeping fans engaged. Every time she pops back up after a hit, keeps playing hard, and stays composed, it feeds into the warrior image her supporters love. But there's a limit to how long they can last before something gives, either physically, in the form of an injury, or emotionally, in the form of burnout. And if that happens, the league will have no defense against the inevitable accusation. You let this happen. Because at the end of the day, this is about leadership. Leadership is stepping in before something becomes a crisis. Leadership is protecting your players not because they're stars, but because they're people. Leadership is sending a clear message about the kind of league you run. Right now, the message the WNBA is sending, intentionally or not, is that star power doesn't guarantee protection. Rules are enforced selectively, and silence is their default setting in a storm. And that's the real problem. Not just for Caitlin Clark, but for every player who's watching this unfold and wondering how the league would handle it if it were them. This story won't just disappear. It's going to keep evolving until someone at the top decides to rewrite the ending. The question is whether the WNBA will take control of that ending, or whether it will be written for them by the media, by the fans, by the lawyers, or by the federal government. If they keep choosing silence, they're not just risking Clark's career. They're risking their own. Players from other sports are already hinting at their support for Clark, and that's telling. When athletes outside your league start weighing in, it means the issue has crossed over into the wider sports culture. That's when sponsors get more nervous, fans get more vocal, and reporters get more aggressive in chasing answers. At this point, even a late response from the commissioner's office, suspensions, public statements, rule clarifications, will feel reactive, not proactive. The damage to trust has already been done. Because here's the truth. Fans can forgive mistakes. What they don't forgive is the feeling that those mistakes were avoidable. And every unpunished hit on Caitlin Clark feels like exactly that, avoidable. The league can still pivot, but the window is closing fast. Protecting Clark now isn't just about her. It's about whether the WNBA can prove it actually values the players it markets.